For those who don't know me, my name is Oleg Suntsov. I'm from Moscow, and for the last 25 years I have been studying the Vedas, practicing them, and sharing my experience with those who are interested in it. And today we will be talking about predestination, as promised. This topic is indeed very important and interesting, because actually everything is fine in our life, isn't it? Simply, we want some things to be a bit better. It's not that we came out of helplessness, or we feel somewhat bad, or are searching for something. No, not really. It's a good country, good weather, the sun is shining, right? But we want to improve because we have such a nature that we want to search for perfection. There is beauty and it attracts us, because by nature we are striving for perfection. We want things to be as good as possible, more interesting, more subtle, isn't it? And such is the culture. You see, people are striving for this. They are constantly changing their wallpapers at home. Everyone is searching for some kind of perfection. They are constantly trying on new things, experimenting. What for? Search for perfection. And even though everything is fine with us, as we are striving for perfection, we still want to clarify this topic of predestination. Maybe I could find myself and live more perfectly. And in order to clarify this topic, first we will talk about what predestination is in principle, why is it important, how to find it, what it is like, and if there is such a thing as predestination at all. Then we will talk about different approaches of seeking one's predestination. There are conceptually different approaches to this, and we will also talk in detail about the Vedic understanding of predestination, because I represent the Vedic knowledge. It's interesting how the Vedic wisdom of the ancient people, living many centuries before us, and who were very advanced, they were not simple savages with axes. They were cultured people whose civilization was covering all the spheres of human life. They were achieving great successes of perfection. How are they seeing predestination? And most importantly, how this ancient understanding of predestination can be used in our everyday life in prospering Europe. So how can we apply it on practice? Of course, it is very interesting to listen to stories of how it was before, but how can we apply it in our own situation? So this is our plan. We will talk about predestination in principle, and then about two approaches to predestination, then about the Vedic predestination, and how we can use this predestination in our successful European life. Is it a nice plan? Now let's talk about predestination. Predestination is such a somewhat controversial question. When people say you are predestined for something, people get a little bit confused. What do you mean I am predestined? I am a free person. I can achieve any results in any field. We have unlimited opportunities. There is such an opinion. To represent this understanding, I will draw a sphere, because I cannot draw a Play-Doh. But let's imagine this is a Play-Doh, which can take up any form. You simply squeeze it, and it takes up any form you need. And this is a concept in which any one of us can achieve whatever he wants. You are just being lazy. For example, you can become a president of America. Do you understand? Yes, I understand, they say. Okay, let's do it. We need to begin doing it already. No, hold on, but I don't want it, they say. But you simply have to want it. Let's play big. Don't think about buying a washing machine. You have to become a president. It must be better to be a president. And we can find that, of course, people from the TV will tell us, if you were not lazy, you could have achieved this and that. You just need to put more effort. And we feel a bit shy and think, yes, maybe this is true, I need to try, but it doesn't work out. So actually we're simply being lazy. Do you agree? Yes? We could have achieved everything, but wait, why do some people have this laziness and others don't? This means that we are not the same. If I tell you that any one of you can make 1000 push-ups, I don't think that it will be actually happening. If I tell you that any one of you can earn $100 million, well, I doubt that everyone will be able to do it. What does this mean? It means that we have a particular condition, a particular limitation in which we are able to function. Therefore, there is the second approach, and I don't really believe in the first one. Life somehow doesn't prove it to be true. The second approach is that every one of us has got a particular form, and you know, it is very individual, just like this. And what do all these protrusions and cavities mean? They mean particular conditions in which our body and mind can function. For example, some people like traveling. They love it more than anything in the world. They want a new landscape from their window every day. There are such people, aren't there? There must be. And they are working in between their traveling, and then they tell everyone how they were traveling, showing pictures, how they were eating some exotic fruit in China, and how happy they are. The next day they are in Japan, and the next day they are somewhere else. And there are people for whom such traveling is somewhat tiring. They want everything to be stable, according to schedule, very accurate. There are such people, aren't there? Some people like singing a lot, so much that when they close the bathroom door, they start singing straight away. And other people like writing books. Others like driving a car. For example, I hate driving, because I don't know how. But someone may sit into the car and simply merge into it. They like driving this car even without any purpose. This means that every one of us has particular desires which we want to fulfill and which we want to realize really hard. And each of us has got particular abilities and capacity which differentiate us from others. And one interesting thing which I want you to understand is that if we have particular capacity mounted in our body and mind, then they make us, they inspire us to use themselves. For example, you have 20,000, what do we have here? Yes, francs. No, let it be 200,000 francs. Let's say a very, very thick pack of money, and it protrudes from your pocket. And just imagine that it suddenly appears in your pocket. What will be happening to you then? It will be digressing us. Yes. Straight away you get thoughts that as soon as you get opportunities, straight away you get thoughts of how you can realize these opportunities. If a person has big muscles, just like this, what will be happening with this person? Yes, they need to be used somehow. If a person is able to draw very straight lines, for example, will he want to realize this ability? I remember one person I knew, please don't ask where he is right now. He had a genius mystic ability. He could see how to earn money everywhere. And he was not working, he was living and earning with advising people how to earn money. And I was teaching him. He came for 3 months to study Bhagavad Gita, And we were walking down the Red Square, and he was asking me something. He had another ability. He had a phenomenal memory, and it took him once to hear, and he could remember it for whole life. And the second was that he could think of how to earn money. And we were walking down the Red Square, and he was asking me something. Do you remember at the lecture you were telling something? I could not already remember what I was telling, but it must have been something correct. And we were having this conversation, and suddenly he stopped and said, "Listen, I cannot walk here anymore. There is money everywhere under our feet." Such a person. Of course, it's clear that he would want to make money with it. And this is what he was actually doing. So, if we have a particular form, particular abilities, particular capacity, where did they come from? They may be different explanations. Some people say that these are our genes. For example, there is Uncle Gene who defines what we will be like. Some people say that it was God who created us different like this. Some people say this was our karma who brought to such result. But nevertheless, life shows that here we are, 20 people, and no one of us is the same. No one. Why is our clothes different? Why do you look different? Because you have a different mind, because you have a different life, different capacity. Is it clear? A simple thing, isn't it? So what does it mean to find own predestination? If I have particular desires or abilities, then I want to find such a place in space where I can realize these abilities and opportunities and just see what happens. So we need to find such a place. Let me draw a birdhouse like this for you, and in this birdhouse, at this place, we're waiting for you and guarding the place, especially for you, haven't we? Yes. So we have to find such a particular place in space where this form of ours, for example, if I have such a particular need to draw lines, then it would be nice to find such a place where they would be asking me if I could draw such a line very nicely. And I would be drawing it, and they would be saying, "Hey, this is amazing, isn't it nice?" And if I like driving a car and they tell me, "You know, there is such a requirement of driving a car all day, and we even will be paying you money for it. How lucky." And some people may be told, "You have to be sitting at one place and checking tickets. Don't go anywhere, there's a lot of free time, you just need to check these tickets." It's simply genius. Is it clear? So, if we find such a place in space where our desires would get completely realized, then this is our predestined place. Isn't it? So what happens when a person tries, or when he doesn't find his place in space, when he doesn't find such a place where all his characteristics are considered, and he tries to fit into this birdhouse, which has a round place, but he himself is different like this. He is figured and is trying to get into this round hole. What happens with a person when he is not at his place? Let's think, let's remember what happens with him. Anyone who has versions, you may raise your hand. Stress. Why? Sleeplessness. Why? He's unsatisfied with himself. So his desires are not satisfied, not realized desires, and therefore he has stress and sleeplessness. For example, he is a fish, but he is being told that he needs to urgently climb a tree. And for example, some monkey who was nearby quickly climbed there, which made that fish feel like a freak, a feeling of inferiority. I'm unable to climb this tree. I am no one, completely nothing. Maybe I should just go and drown myself right now. Okay, any other nuances or characteristics of a person who tries to live at a place which is not his own? Burden. he always tries to push himself into there.
Он залазит сюда, смотрите,
Just
он
see, he
толкает
tries to
себя
push
сюда, а
himself
эти
in,
углы,
but
они
these
ему не
corners
дают
don't
туда
allow him to
пройти.
get in.
Вот сюда вот садитесь.
Please
Вот
take a
сюда.
seat here.
Мы для вас
We were
сторожили это
saving a
место. Когда вы
place
стояли
especially
в
for
пробке,
you.
да?
Have you been stuck in a
Мы
traffic jam?
молились за вас.
Yes. We were praying for you.
Да, то есть
So
получается,
it
что
turns
человек, ему
out that the
тяжело. Когда он
person
сюда
struggles a
залазит,
lot.
да,
When he
ему
tries to get
тяжело. Вот
inside there,
это
it is
оказалось, что это
really
вы
difficult
сюда
for him.
привели. Тяжело, и
when a
когда, знаете,
person
человек заставляет, ему не
pushes
нравится, у
himself,
него
he
не
doesn't like
получается, он
it,
себя
it doesn't work
заставляет,
out, but
ему
he keeps on
очень
pushing
тяжело
himself,
жить. Да, вы об
then
этом
his
говорите.
life will be
Еще
very
какие у
difficult.
него нюансы?
Is that what you meant? Okay, what are variants? A person
И что?
forgets who he really is, and so what? And it gets even harder and harder for him. The longer he stays in touch in such a state, the more difficult it
Найти
becomes
себя.
to find his own
Он
self.
забывает, кто он
He
такой, да, и,
forgets who
потом,
he
и вот
is,
он,
and
на самом деле,
actually
он
he
чувствует
feels
себя
like a
неудачником, да, вот
loser,
как этот
just like this
бедный,
ugly
гадкий утенок.
duckling.
Он же чувствовал
He
себя
was feeling
неудачником
himself
среди
a
этих
loser
индюков,
among these
да,
ducks,
среди этих
among
людей, которые
those
говорят, да ты
people
просто
who say
никто.
you
А
are
на самом
simply
деле
no
он был
one, but
потрясающим
actually
лидером.
he was an
Еще
amazing
какие
one.
происходят вещи, когда
What
человек
other
пытается
things
жить не на свое
are
место.
happening when a person tries to live at a place which is not his?
И
He keeps on tolerating the situation, and he buries
закапывает
himself.
себя.
What
Что
do you
значит
mean?
закапывает себя? В
Literally,
буквальном смысле, что ли?
he leaves his needs and desires and functions like a
То есть он
machine.
становится машиной,
So
да?
he
То
turns
есть
into a
эмоций никаких
machine,
нет,
no
просто на
emotions,
автомате
simply
делает
does
свою
his
работу.
work
Кстати, как он будет
automatically.
свою
By
работу
the way,
делать, которая
how
не
will
его
he be
работа?
doing work which is not his? What about those who are at their place?
Мы
Hold
сейчас
on, we
дойдем,
will
дойдем,
come to
дойдем.
this point.
Мы сейчас признаки, я
Right
хочу
now, I'm
просто вам
trying to
показать,
show you
какие признаки, что
characteristics
человек не на
which
своем
show
месте.
that a person is
Вот,
not at
вместе
his
с вами
place.
мы пытаемся
We're
это
trying
сделать.
to do this together.
Когда он на своем, мы сейчас
What
узнаем,
happens
что
when
будет.
he is at his
Но
place?
вот
We
что
will also
происходит,
find
не
out.
как он делает
But
свою
how
работу,
is
если
he
он не на своем
performing
месте.
his work when he's not at his place?
Нехотя, ему
Yes,
тяжело,
unwillingly. It is
ему
very
трудно
hard for
это
him to
делать.
do it. It is
Всегда
always
неинтересно это делать,
uninteresting,
механически,
mechanical,
как на
just
каторге.
like at a penal servitude.
Так? Еще что будет с
What
таким
else will
человеком?
be happening with this person?
Какие признаки?
What characteristics?
Злиться на
He
других.
will be
Почему?
angry at others. Why? Because he will be
Почему
envious.
зависть и
And
злоба
why
у
is
него?
that?
Да потому что ему
Simply
плохо на
because
сердце.
he's
Знаете,
feeling
когда
bad
вам
inside
плохо,
his
когда вы
heart.
голодны,
You know when you feel bad, when you're
знаете, вот
hungry.
кушать хочется
You
сильно.
know when you really want to
Вот вы не
eat.
ели
You
уже,
haven't
со
eaten since
вчерашнего
yesterday
утра.
morning.
Вы приходите,
And
и
you
вас
come
какую-то
here and there
лекцию
is
здесь вот
some
нудную.
boring lecture.
Говорят, вы понимаете.
They're asking
А вы
you
не
if you
понимаете, вы
understand,
хотите
but you
кушать.
don't
И
because you
поэтому
want
что
to eat. And
происходит?
therefore, what
Вы
is happening?
начинаете кидать
You start throwing
рюкзаки
bags
в лектора.
at the lecturer,
Что вы к нам
saying, why are you
пристаете?
troubling
Зачем вы задаете
us?
эти
Why are
дурацкие
you
вопросы?
asking all these
Можете
silly
просто
questions?
рассказывать
Can you
нам
simply be telling
интересные
us
истории?
interesting stories?
Да, сразу, ну такая вот.
Why is it
Почему?
so?
Голодно.
Because of
И
the
вот когда
hunger.
человек
And
внутренне
when a
устает,
person is
возникает
unsatisfied within,
злоба,
he becomes angry,
возникает какие-то зависть, почему он
envious.
так, почему
All of
он не
these
так. Это
things
все значит, что внутри
mean
плохо.
that a person
Еще
feels
такие
bad
люди, я вам
inside.
подскажу,
I
любят
will
хвастаться.
hint you one more thing. These people
Потому
also
что
like to
человек,
show
который
off.
хвастается,
Because a
который
person
счастлив,
who is
нужно ему
happy,
всем объяснять, что
does
он
he need
счастлив?
to explain everyone that he is
Не
happy?
нужно, ему
He
и так
doesn't,
хорошо.
because he is already
Но почему
happy.
человек
But
хвастается?
why
Он
do people
показывает,
show
знаете,
off?
мне хорошо,
Why do they
мне
demonstrate
очень хорошо,
this?
понимаете?
I
Вы посмотрите,
feel
как
really
я
good.
вообще
Just
живу.
look how I live.
Смотрите, как я
Look
счастлив.
how happy I am.
Подождите, если вы
Hold on.
счастлив, так
If
это
you are
очевидная
happy,
вещь.
these
Зачем
things
об
are
этом говорить?
self-evident. Why do you need to speak about it?
Ну да, да, чтобы вот
Yes,
он
he
говорит,
is
он показывает, чтобы сказать,
demonstrating it so
о,
that
вот ты
others
так
could say,
живешь,
wow, you're
ну,
living
хотя бы
so
чуть-чуть
nicely.
легче стало.
And they could feel
Кто-то
better.
ему
At
как-то
least someone
позавидовал,
got
хоть
envious
чуть-чуть
of him,
как-то
approved
одобрил его,
him,
что не хватает.
because he is
Вот
lacking
это
it.
хвастовство,
And
это
this
способ
showing off
просто
is simply a
привлечь
way of
какое-то
attracting some
внимание.
attention.
Еще что
Another
делает такой
thing,
человек?
what this
Он
person
начинает
does
заниматься
is that he
ерундой.
starts doing all sorts of silly
Тогда как ему
things.
плохо,
Because
и
he's
надо
feeling
как-то
bad and he
отходить
needs
от
to
этого
come
плохо.
out of this
Он
condition.
начинает,
He starts,
я же не буду, есть
I will not go
извращения
into
какие-то люди.
too many details.
А
There
есть
are
просто
all
какие-то
kinds of
интересные
perversions.
хобби.
There are
Допустим,
also
он
different
покупает
interesting
себе
hobbies. For
набор
example, he
по
buys
уходу
himself
за
a
пухом,
Neville aftercare kit
чтобы пух
to be able to
вытаскивать
take flaws
и
out
собирать его в
and
банк.
collect
Вы
them.
смеетесь, а в
You are
интернете
laughing, but
можете
in the
набрать,
internet you can
и
find
оно
it.
там есть. По годам
By
человек
years, a
собирает пух
person
из пуха.
collects flaws from the navel,
А кто-то
Others
кто-то красит
paint
бейсбольный
a
мячик.
baseball ball throughout his whole life, and there's already 25 kilos of paint, and people from all over the country and world visit him to paint this ball. I remembered about Tom Sawyer, who was painting a fence and was even collecting money for it. So this man is doing the same thing. He takes money from people who visit him to paint the ball. Why? Because somehow one needs to feel this inner emptiness. But why? Now let us ask a respective question. What is the quality of a person who is at his place? He is somehow joyful. His desires are fulfilled. He wanted to drive, he drives. He wanted to sing, he sings, etc. So everything is engaged. And for such a person, it is easier to be kind, easier to give something to others. You see, they say that one has to be good and kind, help others. But if there is emptiness inside, if you are hungry yourself, and someone is asking you to give him some food, if you don't have anything to eat yourself, first of all, you will most probably not even notice such a person. We're too busy with own things. But even if we start walking around this person, worrying that he must be fat, if we don't have anything to give, how can we help him? So therefore, people who are at their place, they are more satisfied, they are more noble in their actions because they have a resource. They are able to give, they are able to help and behave nicely. What does it mean? That he feels better. It is better to be at own place, to find this place in space where all of these things can be considered. And now naturally a question arises. I don't know whether you managed to define with regards to yourself whether you are at your place according to these characteristics, but one question arises. Why on earth do people take up positions which are not theirs? Why are they doing this? Why are they trying to fit into this space which doesn't fit them? Let us do it one by one. Whoever wants to say, please raise your hand. Some people are afraid. They start with one thing and then they cling to this position. But why do they cling to it? Because they happen to get it. Do you mean in terms of money? For example, a person needs some money and he doesn't have any other way out, and then he has to take whatever there is. Anything else? Values which are imposed to us from the outside. Imposed values. Okay, let's talk about it, but a bit later. I will tell what values are imposed from outside. Currently, we have such a civilization which is based on money. Money and of course, many people are taking up positions and doing things that are dictated by money, and thus they are doing what they don't need to be doing. Okay, I understood that it's money and civilization that are to blame. What else? People are afraid of radical changes. Okay, they're afraid of changes. And with regards to men, if a man has got a particular amount of money, then he is considered to be successful. Otherwise, he is considered to be unsuccessful and needs to go into businesses that he doesn't like. Okay. Yes. What else? I think another important factor is family. How a person was educated, their facilities. You mean how person was brought up? Yes. Correct. There is another factor. I will give you another hint. Often a person is unable to understand what he wants. He has so many things. A little bit of everything. From one point of view, he wants to be at one place, but he also wants to travel. He wants a family, but in such a way that it didn't disturb him. He wants to be a boss, but without responsibility. And whenever there is a lot of everything at the same time, the person becomes, very, very special. He cannot understand what he actually
что же ему вот на самом деле надо, да? Вот он
What
не
does he
может
actually
разобраться в
want?
своей
And
природе. И сейчас люди, к сожалению,
nowadays, people's nature
очень слабо у них природа
is not
проявлена, то есть очень
manifested
много всяких
very
желаний,
clearly. They have
и
so many
очень
desires,
трудно
and it is very
определить,
difficult
а
to
где вот
define
мои
where are
самые
their
сильные
most
потребности,
powerful
самые
needs,
сильные
most powerful
способности, в
abilities,
которых лучше
which
всего
are
мне
best
развиваться.
to
То есть первое,
develop.
почему человек
So
сам,
a
он
person
не может
is
разобраться в
unable to
своих
understand
желаниях.
his desires,
И в этом надо
and
ему
he needs
помочь.
to be helped
Раньше,
in this. In
в далекие времена,
previous
люди
times, a
помогали
person
это
was
делать,
helped in this process,
особенно до того, как
particularly
еще
even
он
before
смотрит
he
телевизор, ему
starts
как-то
watching
объясняют
TV,
что-то.
he's being explained
Маленького
that
ребенка,
by
согласно ведическим
Vedic
представлениям, мы
perspective,
живем не один раз,
we
это
live
же не
not
про
once.
реинкарнацию,
You may have
поэтому
heard
вот эти
about
способности и
reincarnation, and
таланты,
therefore
которые,
these abilities
они,
and
знаете, из жизни в
talents
жизнь
are
передаются.
transferred from
И
one
вот
life to
когда еще
another.
маленький
And when
ребенок,
a person was still
ему
small,
на выбор,
he
там
was
есть
given
определенная
a
церемония,
choice. There
ему
is a
на выбор
particular
дают
ceremony when a child is
выбрать
given
какие-то
particular
предметы,
objects
связанные
which
с
are
определенной
connected
профессией
with
и
a particular
направленностью.
profession
И
and
ребенок,
direction
он же
in
ничего
life.
не понимает.
And this child
Вообще
doesn't
ничего не понимает.
understand
Просто
anything at
что-то
all, but
нравится,
at the
знаете, там на
level
уровне
of
нравится.
desires,
Но откуда это
he's
нравится?
got
С
these
прошлого
likes
это
and
нравится.
dislikes. But
Вроде
where do
ему
they
что-то
come from? From the
нравится, и он не
past.
понимает,
So he
почему
likes
он
something,
тянется
but he
туда, и
doesn't
родителям
understand
уже
why. And
понять,
on this
куда его
basis,
потом
parents
развивать
understand
это
where
лучше.
it is better to
То есть
develop
первый
him.
признак, что
So the
человек
first thing is
сложно
that
разобраться в
for a
своей
person
природе.
it is very difficult to understand his nature.
Вторая
And
проблема
the second one
это то, что на
is
нас
that
влияют
we are being
окружающие. Вы
influenced
правильно
by
сказали,
the outside
родители.
world. You were right
Порой
about
родители
parents.
не
Sometimes
понимают. Они
parents
хотят
don't
нам
understand.
добра,
They want to do good
несомненно,
for us,
несомненно. Они хотят нам
but
добра, но так как они сами
because
не
they
научены
themselves have not
тому, как
been
развивать
taught how to
ребенка,
develop a child,
то они
then
накладывают на
they
этого
tend
ребенка
to
свои
project their
несбывшиеся мечты.
unfulfilled dreams onto this
Допустим,
child.
папа хотел
For
быть
example, a father
космонавтом
wanted
очень
to
сильно.
become a
У него
spaceman very
родилась
hard,
дочка.
and he
И он
got a
думает, она
daughter, and
должна
he
быть
thinks that
космонавтом.
she must be a spacewoman
Обязательно.
because
Потому что надо
one
быть
has to
космонавтом.
become a spacewoman.
А она
But
создана для
she's
того, чтобы
meant
быть
to be an
бухгалтером. Представляете?
accountant,
То
and
есть у нее все заточено под
everything in her
бухгалтера. А он
personality is
ее,
meant for
значит,
accountancy.
с парашюта
But he
бросает.
throws her
Представляете,
with a
бухгалтера с
parachute.
парашюта.
Can you imagine to throw an accountant
И
with a
она как бы, ну
parachute?
вот все он для нее, и
And he
деньги
does
тратит, и
everything for her, spends
образование,
money,
и
gives
спортзал, и
education,
все,
pays for
что
gym,
надо.
and
Она ей
everything
что-то
one
не
can think
то,
of. But she thinks
не
it's not
угадала.
her thing. Bad
Ладно,
guess.
родители. То есть
It's okay
родители,
with
они хотя бы
parents.
по
At least
доброте
they are
своей,
doing it from their
порой
kindness.
не знают.
They
Но они
simply
хотя
don't
бы по
know.
доброте,
But
не знают просто. Но другая вещь, это
another
то, что
thing
люди,
is
я
that
пишу
people,
рекламу.
I will put advertising.
Это то, что вы
It is what you
сказали,
mentioned,
навязывают
that they are
определенные
imposing some
ценности.
particular values
И
onto us.
навязывают их
And
не из
this
добрых
is done not
соображений.
from good intentions.
Реклама, это, знаете,
It is not
какой-то
like
хороший
some good
дядечка,
man
который вот о вас переживает очень
is
сильно,
very much
чтобы
worried
вы, знаете,
about you, so that you
процветали,
were
чтобы у вас все было
prosperous and everything
хорошо.
was good in your
Дядечка
life.
думает о
This man
другом.
is thinking
О чем
about
думает
something else.
дядечка?
He's
Как
thinking how to
заработать
earn
денежек
as much money
побольше.
as possible.
Но так как вы
But because you don't
не все едите,
eat
он вам
everything,
объясняет,
he
что вот
explains you
именно вот
that without
эти
these
шарики вам
particular
надо
balls,
есть.
you will
Без них у вас
not
ничего в
succeed in
жизни не
life.
получится. И он
And
объясняет вам
he
это с
explains
экранов
this from the
телевизора,
TV
и вы
screen,
понимаете, что
and
без
you
шариков
understand that
ничего
without
не
these
получится.
balls, you will
И
not be able
начинаете
to
их
achieve
покупать, и
anything.
он радуется.
And you start buying
То
them,
есть
and he
таким
becomes
образом
happy.
реклама
So in this way,
навязывает
advertising
человеку
imposes
определенные
particular
стереотипы. Какие
stereotypes to
стереотипы по
people.
поводу
What are
предназначения
these
навязывает
stereotypes?
нам наш дорогой телевизор? Первое,
First
что
is that
успешный
a
человек — это
successful person means
деньги, да.
money.
Если у тебя
If you have a
много
lot of
денег,
money,
значит ты на
then you
своем
are
месте.
at your place.
Если у тебя
If you
денег
have little
немного,
money,
значит ты не на
then you're
своем
not
месте.
at your
Вот
place.
и пишите отсюда.
So we now have to live
Понимаете,
according
да?
to
То
this
есть человек
principle.
может быть, он
Do you
художник,
understand?
он
A
такой
person may
творческий
be very
человек, у него
artistic
вот,
and
вот
he
есть
likes
вот ему
doing
нравится это
a
делать.
particular
Но все на
thing,
него смотрят,
but everyone looks
он
at
же не
him.
может на дерево,
He's
он же рыба,
unable
он
to
же не
climb a
может на дерево
tree. He's a
забраться.
fish.
Говорит,
But
ты
they
урод,
say, you're a freak
потому что ты не можешь залезть
because
на
of
дерево,
this,
потому что у тебя
because
нет
you don't
4
have 4
машин.
cars.
Понимаешь?
Do you understand?
Ага.
Yes,
И он
I
начинает действовать. У
understand,
кого
he
это я
replies.
читал?
Who did I read
Походу,
this
портрет
from?
есть такой,
There is a story called The
рассказ «Портрет».
Portrait about
Про художника,
an
который,
artist.
я не
I
помню,
don't
кто-то из
remember
наших
exactly
братьев
who wrote it.
это написал, забыл автора.
I forgot the author.
Портрет, там старик был на этом
There was
портрете,
an
и
old
там
man on this portrait.
Нет, этот портрет, он
There was an artist, he was a genius, but he didn't have money. And they wanted to kick him out of his flat already, and for his last money he bought some portrait because he got attracted by the old man on this picture somehow. And at night this old man came out from the portrait and he got horrified. It was like a horror movie. And he came out of this portrait and started counting money, and this poor artist got completely stunned as there were golden coins there. Then someone suddenly made some noise and this old man merged back to this portrait with all the money. And when he woke up in the morning, he was thinking whether it was a dream or it was actually real. He came up to this portrait and saw that there was a hiding place inside the portrait's frame, which was full of golden coins. So his life started from that moment. Eventually he became a renowned artist, but he completely lost his talent. He became a photographer, became rich, but was not an artist anymore. And the story ends in a very didactic way. Whoever is interested, you can check the internet. The story is called The Portrait. It could be either Tolstoy, Dostoevsky, or someone else who wrote it. So they say if you are successful, then you must have money. Otherwise, you are not successful, you need to change your nature, but a person is unable to change nature. So what's the next stereotype? Family is actually a normal thing. It's not a stereotype. What else do they say? They say you have to be great. You have to be number one. If you're a singer, you must be having stadiums of people. If you're a lecturer, then you must be having thousands of listeners. Do you understand? But it is actually not so. Maybe you will be someone who helps a few people. Maybe you will be cooking, but doing it at home for your family rather than in your own restaurant. It simply means that you have a different type of nature, different configuration of your gross and subtle bodies. What is another stereotype? We have social status. That's the second one. And the third one is that everything should be always easy. If I'm at my place, then there should be no difficulty at all. But it cannot be so. In this world, even if you like something a lot, still at some point there is a time when we get tired. For example, I like being a lecturer. I have a good mind for telling something, drawing something, but you know, sometimes I think that I will never ever be telling anything to anyone anymore. It is very tiring. I even write it on my social network page. Don't even wait. But they know that after a few weeks, a person will come back to his senses, he will catch up with his sleep, eat something, and everything will be okay. So sometimes it happens that things get difficult, but it doesn't mean that this thing is not for us. Sometimes we simply get tired. So now we have understood that there is a played out concept, that we can do whatever we want. It is not true because life does not prove it. The second thing is that we have characteristics, and it is good to find a place where these characteristics are taken into consideration. Then everything will be good. When we are not at our place, various nuances start appearing. We have discussed these nuances. Now, why are people situated at a place which is not their own? The first thing, they don't know where their place is. They don't know how to define it. They somehow want too many things at once, and no one is helping them to work it out. The second thing is that people from outside may be confusing them. This may be parents, but even worse than that is advertising, some people who impose particular concepts. We defined a few stereotypes: that a person must be very successful, must have a lot of money, he must be great, everything should always be good and very easy. And by watching all these things on TV, people start desiring them. Instead of doing whatever they do well, they drown in all of this opulence and suffer because of not being at their places. So is it clear? Okay, let's go further. How should one be searching for this place? Is it actually interesting for you? Yes. Are you sure? Yes. Can we open the window a little wider?
Кто у нас? Открой побольше. Конечно, не хватает воздуха.
It is not enough air
Воздуха
here.
не хватает. Теперь следующее, о чем мы
So the
поговорим,
next thing we will talk
два
about is
подхода
two approaches
предназначения.
to
Два
our
подхода.
predestination.
Итак, первый
So the first one
у нас тут чуть-чуть
we have
кактус.
a little bit of cactus here.
Должен вот так элегантно.
We
да,
will put it
здесь.
elegantly, just like this.
Вот, два подхода
So two
предназначения.
approaches for
То есть мы
predestination.
сейчас, вот то, что вот до
So
этого я
whatever we
говорил, это
discussed
вот
before is
просто здравый
simply
смысл.
common sense.
Тут нет никакой
There is no
мистики, здесь нет
mysticism,
никакого
there is no
эзотерики,
esoterics or
духовности,
spirituality
там,
there.
это просто здравый
That is
смысл.
just common
Найти
sense,
место,
to
где
find a
мои
place where my
потребности
needs are
удовлетворены, и тогда
satisfied, and then
будет
everything
идеально.
will be
Давайте мы
ideal.
сейчас вот этот подход, это
And
обыденный
this is
подход
a
к
mundane
предназначению.
approach to
Вот
predestination.
давайте мы его
But
подробно
now
разберем.
let's go deeper
У
into
нас,
it.
конечно,
Of course, we
очень
have a
много
lot of different
очень много разных желаний,
desires,
очень много разных сфер, где
many
нам
different
хотелось бы
spheres
реализовать
where
себя.
we would
Но
like to realize
какие, вот
ourselves.
если так вот,
But normally,
обычно, когда люди
when
говорят,
people
человек
say
нашел
that someone
себя,
has found
то
himself,
что они имеют в
what do
виду?
they mean by that?
Вот когда вы сказали, человек на
When we
своем
say a
месте
person
находится, он
is
нашел
at his
себя.
place,
Вот
he
какие
has
вот
found
представления
himself.
возникают?
How do you see
Что,
this?
где он реализовался?
Where has he realized himself? He is
Хороший
a good
специалист
specialist.
на работе. То есть
So
он
he's
нашел
a good
какую-то работу,
specialist at
где он
work.
вот
He found some
реализовался.
work where
Еще?
he realized himself. What else? He
Ну
feels
да-да,
himself
ну
like
вот
fish
как
in
вот
water.
он, как это
Yes,
выглядит?
that is
В
correct.
какой
But how is
сфере,
it
какая
expressed?
сфера у
In
него?
which sphere? He feels his talent,
Почувствовал, и где он его,
and where
где он
has he
его реализовал?
manifested it?
На работе,
At
правильно? То
work,
есть
isn't it?
работа,
In
социальная
social
сфера. А
sphere.
еще какая
Which
сфера вот
sphere is also
важная,
important
где
for a
человеку, ну,
person
вот
who wants to get
хочется?
realized?
Да,
Yes,
всего две
there are
сферы.
two main
Это социальная
spheres.
жизнь
These
и
are social life and
эмоциональная жизнь.
emotional life.
Правильно? Конечно, есть там
Of
всякие
course, there are
хобби, там еще
hobbies,
что-то
something
такое, да?
else,
Но в основном
but in
человеку
general, a
хочется
person wants
реализоваться
to
в
get
социальной
realized in
сфере,
the social
то
sphere
где-то вот
so that he
как
could
в обществе
take
людей
up a
занять
position
какое-то
among
место, где
others
вот он вот,
and
ну вот свои таланты
implement
применит,
his
то
talents,
люди его
and
признают,
people would
скажут,
acknowledge
слушай,
him and say,
молодец,
hey man, way to
ты на
go,
своем месте
you're
находишься.
at your
И
place.
где-то вот в внутренней
And
сфере, где
the second
кто-то
one is
эмоции
somewhere in
любит
the
его,
internal sphere
да,
where someone
как-то
loves
вот он
him
может любовь
and
свою
where he
проявлять.
can also
Ну вот эти
express
две
his love.
сферы, давайте мы их
So let us write
напишем,
these
да,
two
вот.
spheres down.
Значит, это человек у нас,
So
и
here
тут у
we
него
have a
две сферы.
person, and then there are two spheres.
Вот социальная сфера
The social sphere
и эмоциональная.
and the emotional
Это
one.
внешняя жизнь,
The external life
внешняя — это внутренняя,
and the
внутренняя
internal
сфера, как
sphere.
пишем. Каким образом
How
человеку
must
понять,
the person
чем ему
understand
заниматься
what
в
he needs to be
социальной сфере?
doing in the social
Мы,
sphere?
может, чуть попозже об этом
We
поговорим,
might
мы еще
speak about
вернемся
it a
к
bit
этому вещи.
later. We'll
Есть
get back
разные
to this.
методики,
There
я,
are
может,
different
какую-то
methods. I may share
поделюсь с вами
it with
методикой.
you.
И, допустим,
And
человек
let's
с
say a
помощью
person through
разных методик,
different
может быть,
methods,
проб и
maybe
ошибок.
through trial and
Есть
error.
такой интересный,
There's
одна
one
такая услуга
one
интересная,
service in
в
Russia,
России, может быть,
maybe
здесь
you
тоже
have
есть.
it here too,
Человеку дают
where a person is
возможность, он
given
платит деньги,
an opportunity,
ему дают
he pays
возможность
money,
побыть
and
кем
he is
угодно.
given an opportunity to be anyone he
Директором
wants.
фирмы,
A director of a
там, денек
company, for
директором, он там
example,
платит какие-то деньги,
he pays
и он
some money and
настоящую
they put
фирму его
him in
делают
a real
директором,
company, they
ну, то
give
есть
him
дают
this
возможность
opportunity
попрактиковать
to
это всё.
practice
И он может
and
ощутить
see
себе
how
вот
it
целый
is to
день быть
be
директором
a
фирмы.
director for a
Вот
day.
хочет космонавтом, я
Whether
уж
he
не
wants
знаю,
to
как
be a
там, большие деньги,
spaceman
наверное. Но, ну там, я не знаю, инструктором по
or
йоге,
yoga
там,
instructor,
художником,
an artist,
врачом, ну,
or a
может, там,
doctor
аппендицит
who
кому-то
may cut
вырезать
off someone's
за большие
appendix.
деньги. То есть, ну там какой-то
All
есть
of
предел,
this is
понятно,
for a lot of
разумный, но
money, and of
человеку
course
дают
there are some
возможность.
reasonable
И
limits,
по
but
каким-то,
nevertheless the person is
может быть,
given the
кто-то,
opportunity. Another
буквально
person
устроился на одно
may
место, на
literally
другое
get
место, и с
different kinds
помощью
of
проб и
jobs, and through
ошибок
trial and
разных,
error
да,
he may
вот,
find
человек может
the
найти
position where
вот
his
то положение, где вот его тело, оно
body
полностью,
is
знаете, там вот
fully
как рыба в воде, вы
feeling
правильно, как
itself
рыба
like
в воде.
fish in water. And here we have the emotional sphere, the internal sphere. It is when a person searches for his second half, which will be telling him, I cannot live without you, you are so good, I love you, etc. This is the internal life, and this is also a whole journey in life. It only seems easy because the partners should be matching each other, and even if they do match, it doesn't necessarily mean that they will live happily. There's loads of various courses which people accomplish in order to learn how to survive happily together, so to speak, without fatal ending. Of course, it is another topic, but you know that in order to feel this emotional happiness from relationship, some particular things must be present. Do you know what is the most important thing in relationships for them to be good? Patience. That's right, spot on. Patience. And when a person doesn't have patience, when since his childhood all of his desires got fulfilled, which made him horribly impatient, this is what his parents taught him, that everything should be immediately as you wish. And then such a person enters life, and then his so-called joys of life start taking place, because his parents who were fulfilling all his desires are not present anymore. But everyone else looks at him and says, who do you think you are? But he says, hold on, but I always lived like this. No, but you have to change. If you want to live with others, you have to change, you have to have patience. And so there are many different things. When people were living together in previous times, they were considering one's social status, one's birth, one's nation. These are all important things, because if a person is from the lower class and he decides that he needs a princess, he will have problems, because he will not have enough money for such a princess, not enough intellect, and he will be feeling himself not at his place. She will not understand his jokes, and he will not understand hers. She will say, we need to buy a Ferrari, and he will think that this is a joke and laugh about it. But actually it was not a joke. Or he may say, oh, actually we will have a nice fasting until tomorrow morning. And she will think, it is a joke, but actually there is no money and it was not a joke. And then they will not understand. They will not be understanding each other. And previously people were smarter. They were considering these characteristics because people will have to live with these characteristics, and love ends very quickly. So let's just imagine, I will take the ideal example now. I don't have slides with me right now, but imagine that this person is an ordinary man, and after many trials and errors, he understands that his subtle and gross bodies are ideal match for driving a bus. And he was selling the ice cream and was jumping with parachute, and he realized that his hands are specially meant to hold the steering wheel of this bus. And they're perfectly ideal for this. They simply flow in there. And when he turns around, he got goosebumps from happiness. He thinks how amazing it is. So he's driving this bus, and maybe he's not a rock star, but somehow he feels himself good. And he found his second half. She's not a princess, she turned out to be a conductress, and she understands his driver's jokes. She's even ready to live with him for driver's salary, and somehow they have something to speak about together, about cars, about passengers, and something else. Of course, I'm exaggerating, but just to make it clear. So in principle, he found his second half who understands him. This is important, isn't it? So now I'm asking you a question. So this person managed to realize himself in this sphere. He found his place, and he found his place emotionally as well. Can you tell me if he will be happy? He must be. Hold on, what does it mean he must be? Let's do it in this way. Whoever wants to say, please wave your hand and tell your version. You feel that there is some catch here. It depends. So just tell whatever you feel. It depends on how the external world will be affecting him. So if the external world will be telling him that you're not great, there's no money, he will not be feeling himself so good. Okay, anything else? I wanted to say approximately the same thing. It depends on the external atmosphere. Okay, it will depend on the society. If the society is adjusted on those values, then even though he might be liking these things, he will still be feeling himself bad because he doesn't have Ferrari. Why am I mentioning Ferrari all the time? We were walking in the old town yesterday and saw this scene. We were laughing. There was a red Ferrari. There parked in the wrong place, and there was a policeman standing with his notepad, very happy. I thought he was drawing this Ferrari. It looked like he was drawing something. So we came up, and he was also laughing, saying, "Nice car, isn't it?" And I understood that he was issuing a fine to him, but it looked like he was drawing it because I could see that he liked this car. And so this is a problem. If the society is adjusted to wrong values, then even if a person is at his place, they will still be pushing him, saying that he is no one. But let's imagine that the society is not pushing very hard. What other versions of how he will be feeling himself? He will be striving for perfection. So even if everything is fine, he will be still striving for something more, thinking that maybe there is something else in life. Have you noticed this? It seems that everything is there, but something is still missing. I decided to learn English at last. And my teacher, we associate through Skype, and we have a book, and there is an article about Elvis Presley, and there is his biography there, and I became interested. He is quite an extraordinary person. Was he at his place? What do you think? People were acknowledging him. He had a King of Rock and Roll title, if I'm not mistaken, and his record sales still cannot be surpassed. He was the most successful musician according to sales, and his legs were twisting like this, and this was ideal. They were at their place. So he had success, he was acknowledged. He was doing his job well. But once he said one interesting phrase, "I'm ready to give $1 million just not to be Elvis Presley for one single day." One may ask, "Hey man, what is the problem? What are you lacking in life? Everything is fine, everyone is going crazy about you, you can choose any second half you want." Everyone was going mad about him. With regards to profession, you are at your place. But he still was ready to give $1 million just not to be Elvis for one single day, just to forget about it. Of course, if Elvis Presley went to work as a driver, then of course he would feel worse, there is no doubt. It is better for him to be a king of rock and roll rather than a driver, definitely. And for this driver, it is also better to be a driver rather than trying to be a king of rock and roll. But even if a person is at his place from the point of view of his fulfilled desires, you wanted to live in Switzerland, for example. No? Two of you didn't want. They were forced to come here. Most probably it was just your karma, which you couldn't get away from. You must have got devoured by good karma. But nevertheless, someone wanted, and now he's here and he's looking at it and says, "Okay, Switzerland, so what? So what?" There's nothing special about it. Satiation comes. But it is clear, if he was living somewhere in Siberia, it would be a little bit worse, no? Still okay? Nice nature, mosquitoes, fantastic. Maybe we're talking about a different Siberia. It may also be different. But never mind. Do you understand the idea? Even if a person has his profession and everything else settled, still he will be lacking something. Some further perfection is desired. Why is it so? What does it mean? It means that there are innermost desires within this person which don't get realized even if he finds a place where all his desires are realized from the material point of view. And
тут уже
here
мы поговорим,
we will
каким
talk
образом найти
about
свое
how
место
to
даже вот с
find
этой
one's
точки зрения.
place even
Это
from
важно.
this
То
point of
есть я
view. This
не
part is
умаляю важность
important. I'm not
найти,
decreasing the
занять свои вот
importance of
эти вот
it.
желания
It is important to
правильным
engage
образом.
these
Это важно.
desires
И
in
эта
the right
сфера
way.
важна, и эта
Both
сфера важна.
spheres are
Я просто
important. I just want
хочу
to say
сказать,
that
что
this
это
is
не
not
вся
the
правда.
complete
Это не
truth.
вся правда. И к
And
этой
we
правде нужно
should
добавить
add
еще один
another
элемент,
element to this truth, which will help
который поможет испытать
experience
необычное
extraordinary
удовлетворение,
satisfaction,
который поможет
which will
человеку
help
вот
this
этого
person to
совершенства,
bring this
которое мы все
perfection,
так жаждем,
which we're
сделать
all
ближе.
craving for,
И вот
closer.
эту вещь
And
реализуют
to realize
Веды,
this thing,
это называется
one
ведическое
should
понимание
understand
предназначения
predestination
с точки
from the
зрения
point
Веды.
of view of
Но
the
сейчас мы
Vedas.
разобрались,
Right now
как
we
найти
have
свое
done it from the
предназначение с
point of
точки
view
зрения
of
обыденной жизни.
normal life.
Просто у меня есть
Simply, I
желания,
have desires,
потребности, и
I have
найти
needs,
место, где
and I
эти
need to
желания и
find
потребности
places where I can
максимально
satisfy
будут исполнены.
and fulfill
И
them to the
тогда класс.
maximum. And then
Но
it will be
я
nice.
утверждаю,
But
что
I
даже
say
если
that
будет,
even if
даже будет все
everything
классно,
is
все
settled
равно
on the material
будет
plane,
чего-то не
still something
хватать.
will be lacking.
И вот это вот
And this
чего-то,
something
вот эту
is
вещь
considered
учитывает ведическое
by the Vedic
предназначение.
predestination.
Она
It
оставляет и вот
keeps the
эту сферу,
first
о которой
sphere,
мы поговорили, но добавляет
and
к
it
этим
also
двум
adds
вещам
another one to
еще
these
одну
two,
вещь, которая
which will
позволит
help
человеку
the person to
испытать более
experience
глубокую
deeper
настоящую.
satisfaction. Please
А?
tell us
Есть
quickly what it is.
Мы до скольки
I am
учимся,
just
не?
watching our time. Until
До
what time
8,
we're
да?
here? Until
Мы
8.
оплатили
We have
здесь до
paid
8, да?
until 8.
Давайте
Let us now
теперь посмотрим,
look into
что означает
what
это ведическое предназначение
this
и немного
predestination,
о
this
ведической
Vedic
концепции.
predestination is, and into the
Не знаю,
Vedic
кто-то
concept
слышал,
in
кто не слышал
general.
про Веды?
Who
Все же,
didn't
наверное,
hear
знают,
about
да?
the Vedas?
Нет
Everyone
такого.
probably heard
Вы
about
только не
it.
слышали.
Only you?
Просто не слышали.
Very little.
Очень мало.
Okay.
То есть слово Веда
The
означает
word
знание.
Veda means
знание.
knowledge,
И
and
если так кратко,
if we
что
speak
раньше
shortly, then in the
существовала
past there
культура,
was such a
ведическая
culture,
культура,
the Vedic culture,
которая
which
обладала
possessed
знанием,
knowledge,
определенным
a particular
взглядом
view
на мир,
on the
и
world,
строила всю свою
and it
цивилизацию
was
на основе
building
этого
its whole
взгляда. И
civilization
этот
based
взгляд
on
на
this
мир
view, and
заключается в
this
том, и
Vedic
эта ведическая
culture
культура была
was
распространена
spread
по всей
all
этой
over the
планете.
planet.
Разные
Different
народы,
people's
отголоски этой
echoes of
культуры,
this
этой
culture
цивилизации,
and
она есть.
civilization
Даже
exist
приезжаешь,
even
я в
today.
Ригу
I
приезжаю
often
часто,
come to
там
Riga,
все
and
эти
there you
санскритские
can find Sanskrit
реки,
names of
города
rivers,
называют
of cities.
имена людей на
Even some
санскрите.
names of people
Вот.
are in
Приезжаю в
Sanskrit.
Сибирь,
When I come to
там
Siberia, you
река
could
Кама,
see the river
потом что у
Kama,
нас Омск,
Omsk
да, вот,
city,
такое. Ну, то есть
things like
отголоски
that.
всего
So
этого,
echoes of all of this
оно
are
есть
still
по всему
there
миру,
all
но
over the
даже не
world.
то, что там
Not
санскрит,
only that,
идея,
but
которая
that
стояла
idea
во
itself, which
главе, ну,
was
как бы
in
в
the
центре этой
center of the
цивилизации.
civilization.
И в центре этой
In the center of the
цивилизации
civilization,
было
there
понимание,
was
что
an
у этого
understanding that
мира,
this world
этот мир был
was
создан
created
разумным
by a
началом.
conscious
Ну,
origin.
по-русски Бог.
If we say it
Ну,
simply in
просто Бог
Russian,
как-то
by
вот,
God.
ну,
But when we
как-то
say
вот,
God,
ну, у нас
there
разные
may be
ассоциации.
various
Вот разумное
associations.
начало у всего этого.
Let us therefore say
То
a
есть
conscious
есть
origin.
это две концепции.
So there are
Вот
two main
современная
conceptions.
цивилизация в
The
основном
modern
построена на
civilization is
концепции,
based
что
on
всё
the
получилось
concept that
случайно.
everything evolved randomly.
Знаете, вот был
You know,
большой
there was
взрыв,
such a big bang,
был большой взрыв, и знаете, это
and
вот
you know, at some
рвануло,
point it suddenly
и всё
simply blasted,
получилось,
and
и
everything
всё
worked out.
пошло,
Everything got
и всё
initiated and
заработало.
started working.
И
And
появилась
then
эта
this
инфузория туфелька,
infusoria
которая вышла
appeared, some
из
kind of
океана, там амеба какая-то вышла
amoeba
из
came out
океана.
of the
И
ocean.
там мне рассказывал
And
человек,
one
он
person who
изучает
studies
эту
this
тему
topic
с
of
эволюцией.
evolution
Он говорит,
once
если бы
told
вот
me
это
that
вот
if
вышедшее
this
из
amoeba,
первичного
which came out of
бульона
this primeval soup,
амеба пошла бы не
went
направо, а
not to
налево,
the right,
то ход
but to the
цивилизации
left,
был
then the course
совершенно
of
другой.
civilization would be
Но так как
completely
она
different.
пошла
But
направо,
because it went to
то
the
появились
right,
там вот эти вот динозавры, потом
dinosaurs
Дарвин,
appeared,
потом
then
обезьяны,
monkeys,
потом
then
Дарвин, и
Darwin,
потом мы.
and
Вот. Ну,
then
как бы
us,
всё было
and therefore
классно.
everything
Но
was
я вот
very nice.
лично, вот серьезно,
But
я не
I
верю в
personally
это.
don't believe in
Мне,
this.
ну,
I
я не
cannot
могу в
really
это поверить,
accept this
потому что я
because
вот
Wherever I look, I see trees which are very beautiful. I see grass which is cut, and I understand that some person has done it, that some consciousness is behind it. Because I was in other places and there the grass was not cut, but here it is. It means that it could not turn out by itself. There must be some kind of consciousness, some will behind it, which cuts this grass. If you don't pay money to this will, it will not cut the grass, and it will be as usual. You came here and saw some chairs, and no one will think that these chairs appeared here randomly. Usually, there are not so many chairs here, are there? This was specially prepared for you, and particularly the exact amount. We understand that someone has arranged them. If I haven't seen him personally, still we understand that someone, some consciousness is behind it. No one thinks that the iPhone has evolved from the lighter. And this home button is an atavism from the lighter, which also has a button. They both have buttons. You see, everything matches. Simply these intermediate moments got lost somewhere. Simply, this iPhone 6 and 5, they got preserved, but this transition from the lighter to iPhone still has not been found. They couldn't find it, but we will find, they say. So I cannot believe this if someone accepts this, but I don't agree, because wherever I see order, there is some consciousness. So the Vedic culture set a principle that there is a creator. Not that in the beginning everything was accidental and then consciousness appeared and then the human who is the most intelligent. And as we have been taught in the university, there are these three postulates of science. First is that the human being is the most intelligent. Second, he can perceive the world. And he has to do it in order to exploit it. Do you remember? This from the university, I'm not making it up, am I? And with this approach, exploitative approach, we go into life. But the Vedic culture had another approach. The most intelligent was in the very beginning, and he remains the most intelligent. And therefore, this world has got a particular plan. Just imagine, even when we try to make some order in our apartment, we have a particular plan. Do you think that the creator of this huge organization has done it simply by accident or randomly? He's much more intelligent than us, and if he is, then he must have a particular plan, and he created everything very accurately to achieve a particular goal. We may not know it, and therefore we have got so many obstacles all the time, but he did have a plan. And usually the civilization tells us that a person should listen to his heart, live in harmony with himself. Have you heard such an interesting phrase? This is a very dangerous phrase, to live in harmony with oneself. In fact, it is a horrible phrase, very dangerous. One may get into jail for this, because to live in harmony with oneself means that I need to do whatever I want. Imagine yourself driving a car here in Zurich in harmony with yourself. Just imagine, you would not get anywhere at all. Everyone would simply stand. How should one be driving in harmony with the rules of traffic? Otherwise, you will not get anywhere. Those who are living in harmony with themselves, they are the most dangerous people. They may jump on you at any moment and eat you or do something else, because you know, he just wanted. And he doesn't refuse himself in anything. You just need to loosen up and live for your enjoyment. But the problem is that you can find yourself being under his enjoyment, and then you will not feel very comfortable. So the Vedic civilization speaks about living in harmony with the Creator. with the plan of the Creator. This is the principal difference between these cultures. And therefore, this principle of living in harmony with the Creator penetrated all spheres of human life. How to eat in harmony with the plan of the Creator, how to live family life in harmony with this plan, etc. And they were very successful in it. They actually didn't have any revolutions, if we take success in social life. They had a class society, but they didn't have any revolutions. When Karl Marx was writing his Capital, everything was in agreement there until he addressed to the Vedic culture, because there were no revolutions there. And there is a lot of other interesting things. I can tell you about them separately at some point. So what is the Vedic view on predestination? In order to work it out, let me first tell you about the nature of consciousness. So let us take consciousness. What is consciousness? It is the fact that I experience myself and I realize myself. No one needs proof that he realizes himself. Does he? Do you feel that you exist? Do I need to prove that you exist? This is a fact that you experience yourself. And someone says that consciousness comes from brain, but the Vedas explain that consciousness is completely another category, and the brain is just a keyboard through which consciousness manipulates this body. And if you hit the keyboard quite hard, you know, when I'm drawing here on the board, it turns out that consciousness comes out of my head. What is the proof? The proof is that if someone hits my head, then my consciousness disappears. Therefore, it means that consciousness comes from the head. But it is the same as saying that if I'm typing on the computer, then where do the letters come from on the screen? From the keyboard. And if I hit the keyboard quite hard, then the letters will stop appearing on the screen. Therefore, this proves that the letters come from the keyboard. But the Vedas look at it from another perspective. They say that consciousness is another type of energy. And how do they analyze consciousness? What do we know about consciousness? Consciousness exists, and we, as consciousness, we want only two things. We don't want any other things in life except them. What are these two things? To be happy and healthy. Look, we want to have as much pleasant experiences as possible and as less unpleasant experiences as possible. We don't want any other things. Furthermore, it doesn't matter which form of life this consciousness manifests itself. For example, a body of a cockroach. If you pour some sugar in front of the cockroach, it will go for it. Why? Because it will think that something pleasant is there. If you show your slipper to him, it will go another direction, because it doesn't want any trouble. Therefore, whether these are cockroaches, people, presidents, fish, everywhere where you see consciousness, consciousness means feeling, thinking, and desiring, which means perception of this world. There is some reaction, some will. All of these things mean consciousness, and consciousness lives to have as much pleasant experiences as possible and as less unpleasant experiences as possible. This is what consciousness wants. Therefore, please notice that consciousness is there in different people and different life forms, but it is different. Have you noticed? Everyone has got different consciousness. And how to understand that it is different? We react differently. We see at the world from different depths. There are people who are nearsighted. They're not very far-sighted, not nearsighted. A person is sitting on a tree branch and he is cutting in this branch, and someone tells him, "Hey, you're going to fall. Hey, go away, what are you talking about?" And he cuts off this branch, successfully falls on his head, scratches his head and thinks, he must be a wizard. How did he know? Isn't it? Some people are far-sighted. He understands that if you cut off a tree branch, you will fall. Others are not far-sighted. They think how a tree branch is connected with falling. So this is how it is. And let us divide all those people into two categories, into two directions. The first one has got such a symbol. Whoever is studying at our Vedic practicum, they know the symbol. This is spiral with an arrow going inside. It is when consciousness is not very far-sighted. A person understands very little and he is concentrated very much on his own self. And the second symbol is the arrow which goes outside. It means a person whose consciousness is very broad. He sees the world very broadly, he is sharp, etc. And what is the difference between these two orientations? The first one is when a person is concentrated on his own interests only. Everyone is probably tired of this example, but I like it very much. Whenever we look at our hand like this, do you see that I'm looking at my hand? I don't see you when I look at my hand. Have you checked? Haven't you? Not visible. So look, I don't see you. You don't exist for me. And I start behaving as if you were not existing. What kind of feelings would you have if I started behaving as you were not existing? Do you understand? I would put my boot over there, my sock over there. Here I would spit, there I would throw something. Because no one is here, I'm alone in this room. I would say something, put on some old trousers with a hole. How would you feel? Would you like it? Of course. What? Depends on what you'll be doing. I may be doing the most crazy things. You won't like it. You will? Okay, we will see now. So I may throw something at you? Okay, so you would not like it, we will not be joking. Why wouldn't you like it? Why wouldn't you like my behavior? Because we're here, and you're not being considered. You have particular expectations. You have come to the lecture thinking there's a normal person who came from Moscow, who might be telling something interesting, who will behave, but instead of this, he starts throwing things and swearing as if you are not here. It means that this blind person doesn't see you and doesn't consider your expectations, your desires, and you are not liking it. And what does this hand mean? This hand means my own interests. The more a person is concentrated on his own interests, the less he sees existence of anyone else around him. And he starts behaving without consideration of other people's existence, and that's what we call bad qualities: stealing, betrayal, deception, killing, slandering, you name it. This will all be the same thing. A person who wants something very much, very hard, disregards interests of those who are close to him. Life proves this, isn't it? I would like to give some examples, but we must be on time. What example should I give? I usually tell about Kharkov, my favorite example. When I was going to Kharkov, and there was an evening train standing at the platform preparing to depart to Moscow. I'm waiting until we depart. I'm looking at the window and I see a young couple standing, very beautiful, just like from the magazine. They're hugging each other, saying goodbye. She then goes and sits into our carriage just beside me and looks out in the window at him. The train starts moving, and just like in the movies, the young man runs after it. She's waving him, and according to the script, he must have tripped and fallen down somewhere, but I haven't seen it, of course. And she sighs, saying, "Who would have thought? I never knew that such things even existed." I thought for myself, wow, this girl is very fortunate. It's a great fortune. And fell asleep. The earlier you fall asleep, the earlier you will arrive So I lied down, and at night I woke up to go for business, and I see that very girl hugging another guy. And I think, wow, she's fortunate all the time. And I think, why these things happen? I don't know, maybe that guy was also with someone else. We're not talking about this now, but why did she behave like this? What about that guy? What is she thinking about? She thinks about herself. Therefore, at that particular moment, he doesn't fall under her field of vision. Do you understand, right? We can go on like this. How can a person stick a knife into another person? It is very painful, isn't it? But people are doing this because at this moment they really want something, and this strong desire doesn't allow them to see that this is a living person. How can one steal something? Say, for example, your flat got stolen. How would you feel? You imagine what can be done with the person. But people are doing this. Why? Because they are very much concentrated on their own interests. And the more a person is concentrated on his own interests, the more his consciousness is egoistic, narrow and centered on himself, the more bad qualities are manifested in this person. This is the first thing. The second thing is the less options are there for a person to have pleasant experiences, because he becomes blind and he understands that the only way he could be happy is by eating, for example, but there are other options of getting pleasant experiences. We will talk about them later. So when this hand moves away from our eyes, a person notices that there are people around him. He gets a feeling of duty. I must behave well because these are people. One must understand that realizing people's existence does not only mean seeing them walking around. Seeing walking people doesn't mean seeing people as they are. Seeing people as they are means seeing that there is life and there are some desires which need to be considered. And when a person really moves his palm away from his eyes, he starts seeing living people and behaving himself with consideration of their interests. This is what we call good qualities. What kind of people do you like? Responsible. Okay, what else? Polite. Okay, what else? Kind. Okay. And all of these things are in relation to you, aren't they? When people are like this in relation to you, then we say, this is a good person. Why? Because he considers my interests, right? But a person is unable to consider your interests if he is obsessed by his own interests. Therefore, progress of consciousness is a transition from here to here. Now look, there's another interesting moment. This is what we will need to understand the Vedic predestination. The more consciousness is developed, the more a person gets an opportunity to feel pleasant experiences, which we desire. And the Vedas describe different levels of pleasant experiences. Joy may be different. The first level is the joy which a person can experience from eating. By eating, we mean something pleasant for his gross senses. The most popular thing which gives us pleasant experiences is eating, isn't it? Blueberries, for example, especially the big ones, great bilberries. They are very nice. Or what do you like most of all? Blueberries. You like blueberries? I like mangoes, for example. The real ones. Do you have the real mangoes here? Not plastic ones, but the real ones from Spain or Italy. In other words, we get a mango. It's very tasty. It smells like mango. You take the skin away, you put it on your tongue. What does it taste like? It's sweet. Yes. Do you like it? Not that you don't like it. There is pleasant experience. But how many of such mangoes are you able to eat? I can eat 3. 3. A very specific person. 3 mangoes. How long will it take you to eat 3 mangoes? Half an hour. Half an hour is too long, but maybe you would do it very accurately. So you would do 3 mangoes in half an hour. And after half an hour, how would you look at these mangoes? satiated. You would somehow lose interest to them. Do you agree? It was pleasant when you were eating, and it is also a little pleasant when it is there in our stomach. There is some joy, nice experiences. You can now jump around a little or go somewhere. Now, after half an hour, even though it is quite a long period, usually 15 minutes is enough, you must have counted in the cutting too. I would do it with enjoyment. Okay, we will not embarrass you. Half an hour and then it's over. It's no longer pleasant. After half an hour, it is no longer interesting. You don't like it anymore. Now let's look into another option. Many of you have children. For a person with narrow consciousness, the only pleasant experience is his own sense gratification, because he lives with his body, and he understands that if he eats mangoes, everything will be perfect. Other means of enjoyment doesn't exist for him. Here I include all types of bodily sense gratification. So if it is there, then it is what life is all about, to eat as many mangoes as possible. Then it will be awesome. This person completely doesn't understand people who, by some reason, take these mangoes and give them to other people. They don't even have a clue. They think they are fools. Okay, maybe if he gets glorified for this, then it is okay. It is actually the same level when one gets glorified. Oh, you are the great mango distributor. Then he is ready to share. After he has eaten himself, he can give away because he receives another type of sense gratification, which is glorification. But in principle, this is the same level. But when the person's consciousness becomes broader, he starts noticing that there are other living entities around him. And women have actually got this nature that they get children, and it is physiologically made that they are forced to see that there is another living relative besides. Of course, men also have this feeling. When a child reaches a certain age, they start calling them mine, etc. But for women, it is a physiological thing. It is a continuation of their body. And let's take such an example that there is a child and you have bought 5 mangoes. Do you have a son or a daughter? Both son and daughter. So both. And you have cut mangoes for them, and they come running to you, and they eat this mango and say, "What a nice mango, mom." How would you feel? I would feel happy. It would feel somewhat awesome, wouldn't it? It is somewhat interesting when the child has eaten, and this mango falls not in your stomach, it falls somewhere there. And even if you have a little amount of mangoes, not 5 but only 1, what would be more interesting, to eat yourself or to give to children? It would be more interesting to see them eating it, because they become happy after it. Is there a pleasant experience? Is it similar to when you eat mangoes yourself? Even better. Yes, it is even better. It is so light. It is also an enjoyment, but is more subtle. And when this mango finishes after half an hour, we cannot look at it anymore. But when the children are happy, then mother may walk and jump all day long. I'm not making things up, am I? And in the same way, as there are people who are valuable for us, and we are doing something for them, then the same energy is created. Simply with mother and children it is manifested very strongly, but there are also friends. There are our beloved. There are parents. If there are good relationships there, then when we are doing something for them, a person may experience more subtle pleasures, deeper and more lasting ones. Do you agree? But unfortunately, for a majority of people, these things cease to be accessible. Even now, relationships get spoiled quite fast. People don't know how to do it. They go to courses. Before there were no courses, there were no psychologists. This is a modern problem because the advertising tells us, my brother, you have to do this. Eat this mango and you will be happy. In Moscow, I saw one poster which was an advert for a magazine called Egoist. To be an egoist is cool. And unfortunately, there is such a trend in people. But if a person gets lucky, if this palm does not cover his eyes too hard, he may experience this extraordinary feeling. So let's go further. If giving joy to another person also gives joy to us, then if a person gives joy to the Supreme Living Entity, in which case our palm must be completely taken away, so that the person could notice what is behind all of this. For us it is difficult because we don't see. For example, there is no shooting here for 500 years. It must have happened by itself, haven't it? Simply they don't shoot and that's it. Or maybe someone organized it. What do you think? Who organized it? No, let's be more specific. Yes, the government, the police. They were the ones who organized it, didn't they? Or the government doesn't do anything. They are, aren't they? No one is shooting already for 500 years. But people say, what has this government done for me? What does this mean? That the person is with a palm on his eyes. He doesn't notice these things. He uses them, but he doesn't notice them. But if he looks further and asks why the government, then he would see that there is the topmost governor of this whole civilization, which is the original intelligence, or God. Therefore, if a person is lucky enough, and it turned out that his consciousness is broad enough to admit the existence of this intelligence, and he understands that he must be owing something. They're not shooting after all. Then maybe I should do something about it. How much do I owe? Maybe I need to pay some taxes or do something for him. And at this point, the person reveals another method of getting pleasant experiences. If here he was only concerned about doing something for his body, which is one way of enjoyment, here he's doing something for his dear ones, here he's trying to do something for the topmost living entity. And in all religious traditions, there are saintly people by whose example we see what they were experiencing. What happiness they were experiencing due to living in harmony with this Supreme Living Entity. And all of this I was telling you simply to explain you the idea of the Vedic predestination. And these first, second, and third levels of happiness, when a person lives in harmony with the Supreme Living Entity, then this harmony with the Supreme Living Entity is called Sanatana Dharma. The word Sanatana means eternal and Dharma means predestination. So after all, the predestination of consciousness means to live in harmony with the Supreme Living Entity. Let's look and see how this harmony will look like. If we completely take this palm away, here he is an egoist, here he is a little less egoistic, here even less egoistic. So what is this condition called when a person doesn't think about himself at all? A happy person. The less a mother thinks about herself, the more about the child, the more happiness there is, isn't there? The more one doesn't think about himself, the more happiness there is. So how is it called when a person doesn't think about himself at all? You all had it 100%, when you forgot about yourself completely. In a dream state. Okay, there is another state apart from dreaming. Yes, when people fall in love. When people are really in love for some time, they forget about themselves, and at this moment they are ready to do anything, to think about her, to think about him. They are eating something thinking about him. They are doing something thinking about her, right? And this state of complete forgetfulness of oneself, the nature or Sanatana Dharma, or eternal nature of consciousness, is to love. Yes, to love. To sleep also. But one must take turns.
Это еще не чистое
This is
проявление
not yet
санатаны дхармы.
the pure
Вот когда
manifestation of
остается
Sanatana
только
Dharma.
любовь
But
без
when
сна,
the
это
only thing
идеальный
what's
вариант.
left is love without sleep,
Вот
this
этот
is the
идеальный
ideal
вариант,
option.
вот когда вот он
And this
проявляется.
ideal
И примеры,
option,
это,
when it
знаете, это не то, что
manifests,
вот просто
and it's
теория.
not just a
Во
theory,
всех
in all
религиозных
religious
традициях
traditions,
успешных,
the
настоящих
real ones,
были и
there
есть
are
люди,
people
которые
who
проявляют
manifest
это.
this.
Проявляют это. Каков признак
What
этих
is
людей? У
the
меня отдельная
characteristic
тема.
of these people? I
Кому
have a
интересно,
separate
можете
topic. Whoever
посмотреть
interested, you can
мою
watch my
лекцию «Как
lecture
найти
on
духовного
how
учителя».
to
Я
find a spiritual master.
рассказываю там
There I
об
speak
этих
about these
людях, о том,
people,
как они
how they
выглядят,
look
какие у них
like,
качества,
what are
как
their
их найти и
qualities, how
так
to
далее.
find them, etc.
Но
But one
один признак скажу, они
quality I
очень
will tell you
сострадательны.
is that they are
Очень
very
сострадательны, потому
compassionate,
как они видят, что все связано с их
because
любимым
they see that
поэтому
everything
они
is connected with their beloved
очень
God,
хорошо
and therefore
относятся
they
ко
relate to
всему и ко
everything and
всем.
everyone very, very
Итак,
nicely.
это называется
So
санатана
this
дхарма,
is
любовь.
what's
Это санатана
is
дхарма
called
души.
Sanatana Dharma or
Принцип
love,
также
Sanatana
называется
Dharma of the
принцип
soul.
жертвы,
The
потому
principle
что любовь всегда
is
жертва,
also called the principle
всегда вот такой вот отдавать.
of
И
sacrifice,
чем больше
because
этого
love is always
отдавать в жизни
sacrifice, it
человека,
is
тем
always
больше
giving, and the more one
сознание
gives
счастлив.
in his life, the
Теперь
more
смотрите,
consciousness
если
is
это санатана дхарма,
happy.
напишу это слово,
Now,
чтобы вам.
if this Sanatana Dharma, I will write this word down for
Санатана
you.
значит
Sanatana
вечный,
means
не
eternal.
путать с сатаной.
Don't confuse with the Satan.
Простите.
Excuse me.
Санатана,
Sanatana
санатана, это значит вечный,
means
вечное
eternal,
неотъемлемое качество.
an
Дхарма
eternal, inseparable
означает
quality. And Dharma
предназначение.
means predestination.
Дхарма означает
Dharma
предназначение,
means
также неотъемлемое
predestination
качество.
and
И
also
смотрите,
inseparable
если
quality.
это санатана дхарма,
So this
это
Sanatana
означает,
Dharma
что эта
means that
природа,
this nature
она
is
всегда в
always
сознании находится.
situated in consciousness.
Всегда. И
Always.
обратите внимание,
Please notice that this
что вот эта потребность
need
любить
to
и
love
быть
and to be
любимым,
loved
она постоянно
constantly
дает о себе
lets
знать.
us know
Даже
about
у
itself,
животных.
even in
У меня,
animals.
хотя у животных
Although
это
animals
сознание
don't
не очень сильно
manifest
проявляется.
this
Чем ниже
consciousness
форма
very
жизни, тем
strongly. The
меньше
lower the
сознание
life form is,
свою
the less
природу
consciousness
проявляет.
will manifest its
И
nature.
я просто читаю
I'm
сейчас
reading
книгу
one book now, and
одну, и там автор
there
делится
an
опытом.
author shares his
Они
experience.
приехали
They came to
они приехали в
India
Индию,
and
и
they were
ну, то есть им жалко было этих
really
бездомных
sorry
собак.
for all the
Просто,
homeless
наверное,
dogs
нет
there. You
бездомных
probably
собак
don't have
здесь, да?
homeless dogs here, do you?
Нету, да?
No.
Вот. Если вы в Индию
But if you
приедете,
come
вы
to
увидите,
India, you
что
will
эти
see what
бездомные
it means.
собаки, они
They are all
покусанные,
bitten.
ну,
They
жизнь
really
собачья
have a
реальна,
dog's life
реальна.
there.
Здесь у собак
Here dogs
хорошая
have good
карма.
karma.
Они здесь лучше, чем люди
They
живут.
live here better than people.
Собаки. Сначала человек
In
становится
the beginning, a
хорошим,
person
богатым
becomes a
человеком,
wealthy person,
потом он
and then he
рождается
takes
собакой,
birth as a
которая,
dog
знаете,
which
живет,
doesn't have
ну,
to
не надо ходить
go
на
to
работу,
work,
налоги,
doesn't
просто
need
вот.
to pay
Я
taxes.
в Лондоне еще
Even in
видел, я
London, I
никогда
saw
не
it.
забуду
I will
этих
never
собак.
forget these dogs.
Они, знаете, там был
There
парк,
was
ну,
a
наверное, тут
park,
тоже такие
maybe
парки
here you
есть,
also
их
have these
выгуливают.
parks where
Я зашел в
they
парк
take them
красивый,
out for a
знаете,
walk. And I
эти
entered a
собаки
nice
счастливые
park,
просто
and you know,
выкатывались.
these happy dogs, they were simply
Выкатывались вот по
rolling
этому
out of this
полю,
park down the
реально
field.
катились,
They were really
счастливые,
very happy and
улыбающиеся
smiling
собаки.
dogs.
Я
I'm
привык, что
used
там
to
надо
being
как-то их немножко бояться,
afraid of
что
dogs a
гавкать.
little bit because they may be
Они нет, они
barking,
на меня с улыбкой
but they
смотрели,
didn't.
так
They
виляли
were smiling at
хвостами.
me and waving
Говорили,
their
что тебе,
tails,
что для
saying,
тебя
"What can we
сделать,
do for your
человек?
dear human?"
Вот. Я подумал, это рай
And I
для
thought this
собак.
must be a dog
Тут,
heaven.
наверное, то же самое, да?
Here
Но
maybe
там
they have the
собаки,
same,
значит,
but
другая
their
карма.
dogs have another karma.
Вот, покусанные, голодные,
They're all
и им,
beaten and
жалко стало
hungry,
этим
and these
людям, стало
people
жалко.
felt sorry for them, and
Этих собак,
they
они купили хлеба
bought some
и стали
bread and
раздавать,
started
кормить этих
feeding
собак,
those
и там
dogs.
напористые.
And
Там
one of
одна
those
собака на трех
dogs
ногах
had three
такая,
legs.
ну,
It
потеряла
lost
где-то
a leg
ногу,
somewhere
жалко
and
очень.
looked very
Она стояла в
miserable.
стороне, она не могла,
She was
ну,
standing
драться.
aside, unable to fight
И
with the
когда он
others.
всем
And when he
удовлетворил этих
satisfied
собак,
all
стоял,
those
жалобно
dogs, that
смотрел
dog
на
was
него.
standing and looking very
Вот, он дал
pitifully,
ей этот
and he gave her
хлеб,
some bread,
и она так, знаете,
and
так
she
прям
bowed
поклонилась,
down to him.
взяла этот в рот, в
She
зубы,
took
в
this
пасть
piece
эту
of bread
хлеб,
into her
хлеб,
teeth
кусок хлеба, и
and
куда-то пошла. Не
went
стала есть,
somewhere.
куда-то
She
пошла.
didn't eat
И он
it,
пошел за
and
ней,
he
и
followed
интересно
her. He
стало,
got
он
interested.
проковылял
He
эту,
toddled
и
somewhere,
увидел, что
and
там
he
под
finally saw that there was a
телегой
cart,
лежит
and
другая
under
собака
this
с
car there was
щенками,
another dog with
и
puppies,
он
and
принес
it
этот хлеб
brought that
туда,
bread over there
и дали
and
этому
gave
щенку
it
хлеб,
to a
и
puppy.
этот щенок
And
стал
that
есть
puppy
хлеб, и
started
знаете,
eating
ну,
this bread,
счастливый,
and that dog was
голодный,
looking at the
но
puppy
счастливый,
very
смотрели на
happily.
то, как
They were hungry
щенок
but
ест.
happy to see this puppy was eating this
Понимаете, они
bread. there. You understand, they are alive, and this nature gets manifested even there. And this nature to love and to be selfless is somehow is within us. It flows from us. We try to suppress it under the influence of the advertisement. We don't really need it, we say. Or simplicity is worse than stealing, but still it manifests. Another friend of mine, he was also at a lecture and he was meditating on the fact that if this is the nature of every living entity, how does it manifest itself? He was meditating to be able to see how it manifests itself. And he was sitting in a park and writing something. It was raining just like it is here now, some warm rain. He was sitting in a summer house and writing, and there were people around him. And he was thinking that every person must have this. But what about these people around me? They look quite careless. And he was writing, being deep in his thoughts, and in this reverie he stood up from his place, and all of his working tools, his suitcase, notepads, etc., he forgot to close, and everything just fell on the earth. And these people, they quickly stood up and started collecting all of these things and putting it back inside. They even found some few pens and asked if it was his. And he thought, this nature, it really exists. That nature to do something, it's there within people. People are good by nature. This is our nature. But unfortunately, under the influence of different factors, this nature may get closed. And the more closed it is, the less pleasant it is to be together with that person. And ultimately, such a person gets such forms of life where he is unable to manifest it, trees, for example, or insects. It is difficult over there with it. But human beings are able to do it very openly. This nature is an eternal nature of consciousness, to love and live selflessly. And the more it is manifested, the more living entity becomes happy. Now, a very important moment, we move towards our predestination. I'm going to draw something. So, a person has got two spheres, the first one and the second one, the social and the inner one. This is the first type of predestination, and the second type of predestination has also got two spheres, internal and external, but to these spheres he adds this principle, the principle of sacrifice. So it's all the same. He also needs to find what he needs to do. He needs to find his place in the inner happiness. But he's simply doing all these things by adding this eternal principle of sacrifice there. And just look, in general, the radical thought is that we don't really need the body. We're simply used to it. We cannot live without it anymore. What are we going to look at in the mirror? I'm actually kidding like that. So the soul may live without a body. And in general, when it is without it, but it feels better. We're just used to it. We have some plans, some desires we want to get realized somewhere. We want to be realized here. And in principle, this world is created by God so that we could realize or manifest our egoistic desires here. But the world is created in such a way that the more a person adds a principle of sacrifice into his life, the better his karma is, the more satisfied he is. But the less he is doing it, the worse his karma is, the less satisfaction he has. This is how the laws of karma work. Another separate topic, whoever is interested, you can hear a lecture called Correction of Negative Karma, where I look into these things in more detail. But why a person is given wealth and abilities? Because he was using them in the right way. There was a principle of sacrifice in his life. Therefore, he's living in Switzerland right now. But if he uses his wealth incorrectly, this wealth gets taken away from him. His freedom gets taken away because he was misusing it. So the laws of karma are created in such a way that the more a person adds this principle of sacrifice in his life, the more he is rewarded. Why? Because the goal of this world is to make a person understand that his eternal predestination is to live selflessly, realize that love is his eternal nature, relationship with the Supreme Living Entity. But in the beginning, a person is unable to abruptly reject these things, and he doesn't have to. And the Vedic culture was very respectful towards so-called nature. We say, my nature, my characteristics, my ambitions, my desires, everything is okay, but just add this element and you will see how your life will be much more condensed. And when a person adds an element of sacrifice to his ambitions and desires, this is called svadharma. Sva means own or predestination for this particular life. So what is the predestination of a human being for this particular life, and in which way he needs to add this principle of sacrifice in his own life. And because we're all different, this principle of sacrifice will be different for everyone. What I like in the Vedic culture is that it didn't have this general advice for everyone, because we're all different. We cannot do identical things. It depends on the age, on a person's social status, his talents. Therefore, all people were divided into levels, and the more abilities, the more capabilities the person had, the more he was able to do, the more he was expected to do. Do you understand? And this is great, because taking out the same tax from everyone, do you have it like this here? No. Or they consider everything. This is reasonable because you are all different. Similarly, everyone's svadharma was different because all of us are different. And the Vedas consider three general areas to give a person his svadharma. Because our body is changing, the age affects us. Therefore, svadharma depends on the age. So the age is the first one. I will write down three things which are considered before deduction of taxes. Three things which are considered before giving a person his occupation. What kind of sacrifice should be manifested in his life? The first one is age. Because children have their own abilities. What is the most important, the biggest ability that a child has? Hold on, let's ask someone else. What is the biggest wealth that a child has? Love towards his parents? This is if you educate him. Love from his parents. Okay, love from his parents. But what do they have? They have just... Remember, what do they have? Something which distinguishes them from all the grown-ups. Lightheartedness, okay, energy, they have energy, and the most important thing they have is inquisitiveness. Yes, they will put their nose everywhere. So they have a great urge to discover this world. We don't have this urge right now. They are also small in size, yes, and they are very small, they can fit anywhere. So they have the wealth of inviting some sympathy from everyone, some love towards them, but the most important thing is that they are very, very inquisitive. Everything is new to them. They forgot about the previous life. They want to try everything with their tongue, lick the electric plug, lick a candy. Everything is interesting. Therefore, this is their biggest wealth. And how can this wealth be used in the right way? In teaching them. Yes, in teaching them the good things. Predestination of a child is in learning good things. But how can we misuse this ability? In limiting them. In limiting them, which will make him unhappy. They will be thinking that their parents are taunting them. What else? In teaching them some useless things. So if you don't teach the good things to them, they will automatically be learning something we don't want them to learn. We will not go into details right now. You all understand what I mean. We all learn how to smoke. We had to, otherwise we wouldn't be accepted as a serious person. So this is wrong predestination. This inquisitiveness is there, this is child's wealth, but this wealth can be used for degradation, and can be used for development. So the first thing is age. And what is grown-up people's wealth? What are their characteristics? Teaching. Teaching is for very grown-up people. So you are grown-up people. What do you want? How are you different from children? To do something for the social system. Yes, to do something. We want to do something. Before we were learning, but now we want to do something. Our hands are itching to build a house, to realize oneself. Correct. We want to act with some sense. Do you want to be active? Enough of feeding us with the spoon, let us do something already. Children also have this when they want to do everything themselves. Why are you tying my shoelaces? I want to do it myself. This means that their adulthood is being manifested. And the grown-up people have this thing that they don't want to learn anymore. They need to be active already, right? Is it their wealth? They want to act, and depending on what they are able to do, they will act accordingly. So what is their predestination then? How can this wealth be used incorrectly? In doing something degrading for oneself and for other people around also. Degradation means that people's consciousness becomes narrow, they become egoistic and naturally manifest negative qualities. This means that the person is degrading. This is a characteristic. If he progresses, develops, then good qualities will start manifesting in him. A sense of duty, respect. This is called progress and means that he is going towards love. The old people, what is their biggest wealth? Life experience. And they very much like to teach. But if he lived his life wrongly, what can he teach? Wrong things. And if he lived correctly, then he has this wealth of experience. Therefore, the elderly people like to share experience. They like to be asked. And how can this be misused in teaching something bad and correctly in teaching something good? And the elderly person must not be chasing the young people, be in competition with them. This is not the dharma of the elderly person. His dharma is mentorship and his spiritual development. I speak about it very shortly. You can check my full lecture for further details. The second thing which was considered before deducting taxes is this social status, or which professional talents or wealth a person had. This was called social status. Because there are people who were able to drive a bus, those who were able to cure, and therefore all this wealth can also be used for degradation. For example, a person is very smart and he can become a Professor Moriarty. Do you remember Sherlock Holmes? He was a genius, but where did he use his brain? In doing bad things. But the brain may be used for good things. The biggest wealth is wisdom. And in the Vedic culture, the biggest responsibility was given to the wisest people, because everyone was inspired by following them. And I will tell you one thing about them. They were called Brahmanas. Brahmanas are the intelligent people, but not every intelligent person was called a Brahmana. Only that who used his intellect according to its predestination, in harmony with the Creator, who had the principle of sacrifice in his intellect. That person was called a Brahmana. I speak about it in more detail in the full lecture. Whoever is interested, you may have a look. So the biggest responsibility was given to those Brahmanas because they had to show an example of how amazing selfless life is. Once I was telling about similar things to some audience, and one person raised his hand in certain disturbance and asked, "But why are people not following the Bible? There were certain instructions which were given by Jesus, but why are people not following them?" And I asked him, "But why are you not following?" And he got very surprised and said, well, I don't know. And I said, but I know. You're not following because there is no positive example. If there were people who would follow, but not with a sad face, you know, not with such a sour face, yes, we have to, otherwise you will all go to hell. But with a great inspiration, you know, it's so amazing, it is awesome. In this case, a person gets what? Listen, how are you doing this? Is it really so? Yes. When you are selfless, it is so amazing. Just see. I don't know, maybe you have seen movies about the saintly people. I have recently watched one about, what was his name? The movie is called I Prefer Heaven, Philip Neri. Philip Neri was a Catholic saint. I don't know if you can watch movies about Catholic saints here. And there, this person didn't have anything, and he was living simply by his prayer, and the only thing he was doing was caring about children who did not actually love him in the beginning. They did not trust him, they were like angry puppies who didn't trust anyone anymore. Everyone was exploiting them. Then he made real humans out of them with his love, and he was happy. And whenever you see such an example, then inside one gets a feeling, hold on, but how can I practice this? And these people were ahead of society, such people. This was the biggest responsibility, to show an example of a saintly life. And the others were getting inspired by them, and if a person was a businessman, he was asking, listen, how can I add this sacrifice into my life? And if he was a worker, how can I add a sacrifice? And all the civilization was previously supported by such people. They had the biggest responsibility. And as soon as they stopped using their intellect in the right way, the whole civilization got simply annihilated. And even though the books remained, which say one must be good, one must do this and that, no one believes in this, because all of these are fairy tales. These things don't happen in life. Where is the example? So the second thing is the social status. And the third thing, which was considered in the application of the principle of sacrifice, was sex, male or female. So if a person is able to drive a car, how can he be doing it in the spirit of sacrifice? For example, he's a taxi driver. In giving someone a lift for free. Okay, but if not free, when a person gets into the taxi, how to do it in the spirit of sacrifice? To do it in a noble way. Imagine a person sits into the car and you see him. He is alive. He wants to reach his destination. How can I do it in the right way? With respect. This is what I actually would like to know. How can this respect be expressed by this taxi driver in the spirit of sacrifice when he is ready to consider this person's interests? How will this be manifesting? By playing his favorite song, music, okay. By asking whether he needs the AC or not, okay. What else? By offering some water. Okay, this is already quite cool. Let's put it this way. He will try to bring a person to his destination with maximum speed. Correct? Comfortably. Yes. Anything else? How will he be doing this? Will he be following the traffic rules? Yes, he will be driving well, so that they don't get stopped and securely. Correct. How else will this spirit of sacrifice be manifesting? He will not take more money than agreed. He will play fairly, according to what has been agreed. If it was 10 francs, he will take 10 francs. Because in other places you may agree to 10 francs, but in the end the driver will say 15 rubles. No, euros. And you are not able to do anything. Whoever goes to India, remember to agree this in advance, because later the price may be different, and it is better to have the exact amount, because the change may not be given back. Of course, it's not everywhere like that. So, have you understood? A person starts doing his job nicely. And what is the criteria that the job is done well? Another person's consciousness, whoever is close, gets what? Imagine you have given a lift to a person in such a way. What will happen to this person? Imagine you are that passenger. And the driver has given you some water, brought you to the right place, took the exact amount of money, and even gave you a discount by taking 9 francs only. How would you feel? Yes, and there are such social video clips where a person does something good to another and the other one got inspired and decided to do something good to others. So your consciousness would ascend. Do you agree? When we are doing our job well, thinking about the person, in fact God says that we should be doing our job like this, then person's consciousness ascends. What to speak of when you are doing it with the spiritual meditation, then this is even great. Is it clear?